Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Wait, let me camera back up.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد.
Last week I missed it, we missed it, so where are you now?
Inshallah, we're on Hadith number 10. Today we're doing Hadith number in the book of purification, chapter of water, Hadith number 10 and 11 inshallah we'll do today. Who would like to read? Any of the young boys want to read? Hamza, you want to read? No? You guys going to make me read? Nobody? Going once? Going twice?
I'm going to try. You have to correct me.
Okay, you can each read one.
Try.
Hadith number 10 inshallah. Hadith 10 عن أنس.
وعن أنس بن مالك رضي الله تعالى عنه قال
جاء
ربي
أعرابي.
You read it now.
I'll read it.
Asif,
I can
Asim.
see it also. That's the problem.
You can try, but inshallah next time.
أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه تعالى أنها قال جاء عربي فبال في طائفة مسجد فزجره الناس فنهاهم رسول الله صلى الله عليه
صلى الله عليه
وسلم
وسلم.
فلما قضى بوله أمر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بذنوب من ماء فأحرق عليه متفق عليه.
English.
Narrated Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu. A Bedouin came and urinated in one corner of the mosque, and the people shouted at him, but Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped them. And when he finished urinating, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered for a bucket of water, which was spilled over it. Agreed upon.
طيب inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This hadith number 10, hadith of Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, the great companion, very famous sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He met the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam when he was 10 years old. 10. Some of the ulama say 9, some say 8. And this was in Medina. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was about 53 years old. And Anas, his mother brought him to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam to serve him, to be his servant in his house when he was a young boy. And she came to him and she said, Ya Rasulullah, hada Unais. And she's using the tasghir of his name as a playful way to say, hada Unais, this is my son Anas, small Anas. And she brought him to serve and live with the Prophet ﷺ when he was 10 years old. So he stayed with him, of course, until the Prophet's death, until he was 20 years old in Medina for 10 years. So this hadith, Allahu A'lam how old he was, but he was between 10 and 20 years old when he narrated this hadith. He could be 15, he could be 16, he could be 14. The important thing is it's a young boy who is narrating this hadith and this story of the Prophet ﷺ and what happened in the masjid. So he said, Anas is saying, جاء أعرابي فبال في طائفة من المسجد. he said a man came, A'rabi. A'rabi is the Badu, the ones who live in the desert, away from the city, away from the main community in Medina. The A'rabi, the Bedouins, the nomads, they live away from the city. So they don't know as much as the people in the city. They don't mix with the people, they don't learn what's new, or things like this. They don't know as much as the people in the city. And this is things of the dunya and things of the deen, because they're away from the people. So he described him as an Arabi, making an excuse for him that he doesn't know what's right and what's wrong for some things. So he said this Arabi came and he urinated in the masjid. And he thought this was something normal. He thought it's normal to do that. The masjid in those days, obviously they were not carpeted. There was no carpets. There was no maybe concrete or wood floors or tiles or whatever. It's dirt. There's walls and there's a roof, but the ground is usually dirt and soil and whatever it may be. Sometimes they may cover it with animal skins or the big leaves of the date palm trees just to be over it, but there's no carpet or nothing like this. So to him it's something normal to urinate in indoors like this. So he did this, and the Sahaba that saw him, Rasulullah ﷺ was there, and the Sahaba were there in the masjid. And this was the masjid of Rasulullah ﷺ. This is the Masjid al-Nabawi in Medina. So Rasulullah ﷺ was in the masjid and his companions, and they all saw him what he was doing. So immediately the companions, Anas says, فَزَجَرَهُ النَّاسِ. The people started to rebuke him and get angry at him because of what he's doing. And you see the difference between knowing and not knowing, between knowledge and ignorance, that the Sahaba know the sanctity, the importance of the masjid, how it's supposed to be clean. It's Baytullah, it's for Quran, it's for dhikr, it's for salah. And someone who's away from them, just not very far, a few miles into the desert, he doesn't know these things. So the difference between al-alim wal-jahil. Alim here means someone who knows even one thing or two things about the deen, and someone who is ignorant. Okay? The difference is someone knows the importance of Baytullah and the other person does not. So the one who does not, he thinks it's okay to urinate in the masjid. So that the Sahaba, they started to tell him, they approached him and said, "What are you doing?" Or they tried to stop him physically. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Don't touch him, leave him alone, let him finish." Okay, imagine that. The Prophet ﷺ is telling the companions, let him finish what he's doing. Okay, leave him alone. So he finished, the hadith says he finished, and the Prophet ﷺ ordered the companions to get buckets of water, and they poured buckets of water on the urine, and that's it. Okay? So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he's telling them to leave him alone, because first of all, he already started. He already started in the action. So stopping him would have a harm on him, on the man. And we all know how that feels. Once you start, you have to finish. Okay? So stopping would have harm on himself, the man who's doing this, who's urinating in the masjid. Also, if they tried to stop him physically, the urine would go into other places. So right now the man is just in the corner. And it said, في طائفة من المسجد. Ta'ifa is on the side or in the corner of the masjid. And this word ta'ifa, we had a word last week that was similar to this, from the same root word. Does anyone remember what it was? This word ta'ifa, it's from the same root word as a word we had last week in the hadith about cats. What's the word? At-tawafun. The cats are hum min at-tawafina alaykum. So this is the same root word. Tafa yatufu, to go around something. So here ta'ifa is something on the side, on the outskirts of the musalla, so it means in one of the corners or the sides of the masjid. So you see tawafin and ta'ifa, ta'if, tafa, all from the same root word. So Anas said that he did it in the corner of the masjid. So Rasulullah ﷺ, he saw him, what he's doing in the corner, and he said leave him alone, because if they grabbed him or tried to stop him, it would go into other places. The urine would spread into other places, not just that one spot, and maybe on the walls, and maybe on his clothes, or the clothes of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. So this shows that if you are faced with two evils, you have to take the lesser one. Even though they're both bad, you have to take the lesser of the two evils. What are the two evils? One of them is a man is urinating in the masjid. That's it. That's already started. You have to. It already began before you had a chance to stop it before it began. So it's already happening. That's the first evil. A man is urinating in the masjid. The second evil is that a man will be urinating in the masjid, and the urine will spread around more, and maybe on the clothes of the people. So the second one is a greater evil. So if you are faced with two evils, you have to take the lesser one. Okay, and that is let the man urinate, let him finish, and not pollute and dirty people's clothes or other parts of the masjid. Let the man finish what he's doing, so you take the lesser of the two evils. So the Prophet ﷺ, he told the Sahaba, leave him alone, let him finish, and he ordered for water to be poured onto the urine. So this hadith is in the chapter of water. Why is this hadith in the chapter of water? What's that?
Purifying by the water?
Yeah, the water is used to purify human urine. So water is used to purify human urine, and the way that it was done is just it was poured onto it. That's all the hadith says. The water was poured onto the urine. Nothing else was done. Okay? They didn't take the dirt and throw it outside or anything like that, because it's soil. It's going to absorb into the soil. So all you have to do in a case like this, if it's soil, if it's dirt, you just pour the water on it and that's it. You leave it. But what if it's a masjid like ours, and maybe a child or a baby does that? You can't just pour water on it because it's carpet. You would have to wash it, shampoo it, soap and everything, because it's not going to be absorbed into anything except the carpet, because under the carpet is concrete or whatever. So you have to wash it if it's something like this, or if it's hard ground like concrete or wood or something like this, or tiles, you have to wash it completely and remove the urine out of there, because it's not going to absorb anywhere. It's going to stay on the surface. So you wash it out and you throw everything out. So the Prophet used patience and he used gentleness to deal with this situation. And you see the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ and how he teaches even in a case like this. Someone is urinating in the masjid. Even in a case like this, he uses rifq and lean. That he's gentle and he's merciful with the person who doesn't know. And it also shows how Rasulullah ﷺ recognizes people's different levels of Islam. That he knows this is a man from the desert, and he knows he doesn't know. So being harsh with him and letting the Sahaba yell at him or letting the Sahaba grab him will be worse for the situation and worse for the man. He may never return to the masjid, or he may think the Muslims are harsh, or the Prophet ﷺ is harsh. But he used rifq, he was gentle, and he was merciful with him, and he let him finish. And after this, the man, the A'rabi, after he saw the gentleness of the Prophet ﷺ and the harshness of the companions, he said, Allahumma arhamni warham Muhammad wa la tarham ahadan ghayruna. He said, Ya Allah, have mercy on me and Muhammad only, because of how he saw the Prophet deal with him. And he said, don't have mercy on anyone else. And then the Prophet ﷺ told him, ضَيَّقْتَ وَاسِعًا. You're making something that's very vast, the rahmah of Allah, the mercy of Allah. You're taking something that is very vast and you're making it narrow. Allah's mercy is greater than that, than just for two people. Okay? So he said this to him, and then the Prophet ﷺ taught him about the masajid. He said, إن هذه المساجد لا تصلح لشيء من هذا البول ولا القذر إنما هي لذكر الله وقراءة القرآن. He said, he taught him now what a masjid is, because he doesn't know. Obviously he doesn't know, because he's doing that in the masjid. He said the masjid is not befitting for anything like this, relieving yourself in the masjid or anything dirty. The masjid is not befitting for things like this. The masjid is for dhikrullah, that is salah and Quran and learning good things, remembering Allah and learning your deen and ibadah. So he taught him what you don't do in the masjid and what you should do in the masjid. That is ibadah and dhikrullah. So the man, he learned what the masjid is for. He learned, and the Sahaba learned also, how to deal with people that don't know, that are ignorant. They don't know what they know. And people are at different levels of knowledge and practice of Islam. So you have to know the person you're trying to teach. You have to know who they are, where they're from, what they know about Islam. Have they studied anything? How do they practice? How much they practice? What's their background? You have to know something about them before you can teach them effectively. Okay, you can still teach them, but you want to teach them in an effective manner that's going to change them from what they were on to something that is better. So the Sahaba learned how to be gentle in situations like this. The man learned what the masjid is for, and that the masjid is Baytullah, and it should be respected. And the Prophet ﷺ, he showed his Sahaba and the man what the masjid is for, and how to teach people with gentleness and with mercy, and knowing people, their backgrounds, and how to teach them correctly. And that the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the last place any of this should be done. It's the best places on earth, the masajid, the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is the last place any of these impurities should be present in. And it is the place where good, pure things take place inside the musalla, where people make ibadah and do their salah. So this hadith is very famous amongst the Muslimin. It's very well known. It's known as the hadith of the man who urinated in the masjid. Hadith al-A'rabi alladhi bala fil masjid. And we take from it rulings of water, that water purifies urine, and water can be poured over it to purify it if it's on soil. We take from it the impurity of human urine, that it is haram to touch any place where you are going, where salah is going to be done. It is haram to be on your clothes if you are going to pray. It is haram to be on your body. And if it does come in contact, you have to wash it with water. And it also, this hadith shows how Islam cares for the cleanliness of people and the cleanliness of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that these ahadith that are narrated to us from a story that happened hundreds of years ago, that we take from it so many lessons of how Muslims are to be pure, physically pure and spiritually pure, and the place where we do ibadah should be the most pure place, because it's the house of Allah. Okay, the same way you purify your homes, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has more right to be purified. طيب, inshallah. We're going to move on to the next hadith. You want to read the next one, Asim? Hadith number 11.
وعن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وحلت لنا ميتتان ودمان فأما ميتتان فالجراد والحوت وأما الدمان فالكبد والتحال.
نعم.
أخرجه أحمد وابن ماجه وفيه ضعيف.
وفيه ضعف.
ضعف.
طيب, the next hadith narrated by Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu, the great companion, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave a lot of knowledge in the explanation of the Quran and in the practice and knowledge of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, another young man in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, learning in his youth. We have Ibn Umar, we had Anas, we've had Abu Hurairah, who was also a young man. So these young men in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ are transmitting the deen to us, the deen of Allah. Okay? And they're all, at this time, under the age of 20, or around that age. Okay? And they're all transmitting the deen of Allah that comes from above the heavens to the rest of humanity until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Okay? So this shows how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses some people over others, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses these sahabi, these young companions, men and women, to give us our deen. So this hadith, we didn't read the English. Can you just read the English quickly?
Narrated Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, 2 types of dead animals and 2 types of bloods have been made lawful for us. The 2 types of dead animals are locusts and fish, seafood, while the 2 types of blood are the liver and the spleen. Reported by Ahmad and Ibn Majah, and this hadith has some weakness.
طيب. So inshallah, before we get into the hadith, we're going to discuss where he said this hadith has some weakness. فيه ضعف. Okay, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he says this hadith has some weakness. He didn't say it's ضعيف. He didn't say it's weak. He said it has some weakness. And many scholars have spoken about this hadith and have said it does have some weakness in it, but it is authentic until Ibn Umar. Okay, meaning that it is established to be a saying of Ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab, Abdullah ibn Umar. So it is established to be from the saying of Abdullah ibn Umar, a companion. So and other scholars of hadith, they say the hadith is sahih. Ibn Khuzaymah, Ibn Hibban, and from our times Al-Imam Al-Albani, he says the hadith is sahih. So there's difference of opinion. Some of them say it's sahih, some say fihi ضعف, not ضعيف. The ones who say it's fihi ضعف, they say that even though fihi ضعف, even though it has weakness, Abdullah ibn Umar, he's saying something is halal and haram. And there's no way a sahabi will say this if it's not from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no way a sahabi, a companion, will say this is halal or this is haram unless he heard it from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because he's saying upon the sharia of Allah, only Allah makes halal and haram. Not even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes halal or haram. Everything that's halal or haram is from Allah. Rasulullah is giving us the message. Okay? So a companion will never say, because Allah is pleased with them. Radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. Allah is pleased with the companions, all of them. Anyone who met Rasulullah, was in his presence, and believed in him, believed in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and died as a Muslim, he is a sahabi. And Allah is pleased with him. Just by being around Rasulullah, that's it. You don't have to be knowledgeable. You don't have to be one of the 10 who are promised Jannah. You don't have to be Ibn Abbas. You don't have to be Aisha. If you are in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are considered a companion and you are just. Of course, other companions are better than others with their knowledge and stuff. But in terms of narrating a hadith, all the companions are the same. So the scholars say Ibn Umar said this, and that it takes the ruling of being a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because there's no way a companion would say this is halal or this is haram from their own opinion. Okay, so either way, the hadith is sahih from some scholars, or it has the ruling of a hadith that is raised up to the Prophet ﷺ, that's called hadith marfu'. Okay, if it's established to be from the companion, it's called hadith mawquf, means it stopped at the companion. But hadith marfu' was raised to the Prophet ﷺ. So this is mawquf, but the ulama say it takes the ruling of marfu'. It is from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Uhillat lana." It has been made halal for us 2 types of dead animals and 2 types of blood. Okay, 2 types of dead animals are sea creatures, fish, and locust, al-jarad. And 2 types of blood are liver and spleen. Okay, al-kabid, kibda, wat-tihal, spleen. And those are both organs inside your body. So Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Uhillat lana." So inshallah, what I want to do is, I think everyone has the Quran app on their phone. If you can open up your Quran apps. If you don't have a Quran app, you can come grab a mushaf. And I want you to open up to Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is Surah number 5, ayah number 3. If you don't have a mushaf, you can come get one from the front, inshallah. أهلا شيماء كيف حالك؟ سمية sorry.
Why not?
Just so you know, this is Zabi's daughter, so she's the one making noise. طيب, Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah number 5, ayah number 3. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, حُرِّمَتْ عليكم. Right? Anyone want to read the ayah? Zabi, you want to read the ayah for us?
الميتة حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم الخنزير وما أهل به لغير الله والمنخنقة والموقودة والمتردية والنطيحة وما أكل السبع إلا ما ذكيتم وما ذبح على النصب وأن تستقسموا بالأزلام ذلكم فسق.
طيب, حرمت عليكم. This ayah is a general prohibition from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made haram for you dead animals and blood. Okay, so this is a general prohibition that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is making exceptions for. Okay, so حرمت, it has been made haram for you. عليكم, upon you. Okay, Allah is making haram upon you. حرمت عليكم الميتة. الميتة والدم. We're just going to do these 2 right now, because that's what the hadith is making exceptions for. Al-Mayta is dead animals. Okay? Ad-Dam is blood. So Allah is saying Al-Mayta, dead animals are haram to eat, and blood is haram to eat or drink. And this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is giving exceptions for Al-Mayta and Ad-Dam. He's saying Uhillat. Allah says Hurrimat, it's haram. The Prophet ﷺ saying it's halal, 2 types of dead animals and 2 types of blood. So this is how the Quran and the Hadith work together. Sometimes the ayah is general. Okay, and other ayat specify things that are exceptions, istithna. Sometimes the ayah is general like this, and the Hadith comes. Hadith comes and gives exceptions, like in this case. So from the Mayta, the Prophet ﷺ said, أُحِلَّتْ لَنَا مَيْتَتَانِ. So 2 types of dead animals are halal. This is an exception to the general ayah. So Al-Mayta, he says, أُحِلَّتْ لَنَا مَيْتَتَانِ, and they are Al-Hut wal-Jarad. Al-Hut is general to mean fish. It means all the creatures all the creatures and fish that live in water. Okay? So al-hut can be fish in general, and it can also be specific to whales or large fish. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the story of Yunus, فَالْتَقَمَهُ الْحُوت, that what swallowed Yunus was a hut, a large fish or a whale. So al-hut can be fish in general, or it can be a large fish like a whale. So the Prophet ﷺ says, first of all, al-mayta is any animal that is halal for us to eat that died without dhabiha. Okay? Any animal like a sheep or a goat, a cow, camel, any animal that's halal to eat, but it died in a different way without being slaughtered, without dhabh or without nahr. Okay? There's two ways Muslims can slaughter an animal. One of them is dhabh, and that is the known way we do with the knife, like we do with the sheep and the goats. You lay it on the ground and you slaughter it with the knife. That's dhabh. And nahr, Allah mentions in the Quran, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Nahr is a different way of dhabh, and that is usually by a spear, and it's usually done for bigger animals, like a cow or a camel, an animal that's too big to lay on the ground. And it's easier to do the nahr, and that is you have a spear or a large knife, and you impale it in the neck, and then you cut outwards, or you just swipe at the neck and you cut its neck, its throat. And the way it's done like this because it's easier to do for large animals. You can't put a cow on the ground. And some of us know that we've seen this tried before, and it's just a disaster, you know. And sometimes during the Eid al-Adha, some brothers, they tried to do that to a cow, and it just doesn't work. It's very hard. And so the nahr is easier, and the cow doesn't even know it's going to get slaughtered. But the person, he just walks up to it, and he swipes at its neck, and the cow doesn't even know what's going on, and it drops to the ground, and that's it. The knife has to be really sharp, and the person has to know exactly what he's doing and where to cut. So, al-mayta is an animal that dies without dhabh or nahr. Okay? And they're all haram. So if you find a dead sheep, you don't know how it died, but you didn't slaughter it and no one slaughtered it. If you find a dead sheep, it is haram to eat that meat. A dead goat, if you find it dead, and you know how it died, maybe it died in some way, but it wasn't with dhabh, it wasn't with slaughter, then that animal is haram to eat that meat. Okay? Because the blood was not removed from the body. That's the whole point. That's what makes the animal halal and pure. That the blood has to come out of the body. Okay? And a dead animal that is not slaughtered, it dies and the blood is still in the body, and that makes the meat and the animal impure, and it causes diseases because the blood is still in the body and the animal is not alive anymore. The whole point of dhabh is to get the blood out as soon as possible, as quickly as you can. And the quickest way to do that is with the Islamic way of slaughtering. And when we slaughter, we're not supposed to remove the entire head. You cut only the windpipes and the jugular veins, but you do not remove the entire head. And that causes the heart to start pumping more, and it pumps all the blood out in a matter of seconds. All the blood is out, and the animal does not have blood in it anymore, and it's halal and pure. So, from the dead animals, there are two types that are halal to eat if you find it dead. And that is fish, any type of fish, small fish, big fish, anything that lives in the sea. So it can be fish or things that are not considered the typical fish, the other animals that live in the sea, the octopus or whatever. All those other animals is halal whether you kill it or you find it dead. So if you find a dead fish, you don't know how it died, it's halal to eat. Okay? You just take it, clean it, whatever, and you cook it and you eat it. Okay? So you don't have to find out how it died for fish. It's halal. no matter how you find it. And also al-jarad. Al-jarad is locust. And they're kind of large grasshoppers, we know, but it's not a grasshopper, it's a locust, but they're similar. And these are halal if they are found dead. And some of the scholars, they try to come up with a reason why, and they say because it doesn't have blood, doesn't have flowing blood. This is true for other types of creatures, but Islam has specified al-jarad, locust, and you find a lot of these in Medina and in Mecca. Sometimes when it rains a lot, and you walk in the haram outside of the Masjid al-Nabawi, you see a lot of dead locusts all around on the floor. Where they came from, I don't know, but you see that a lot, just dead, or some of them are alive, still alive, and a lot of them are dead. But dead locust, dead jarad are halal to eat, whether you kill it or you find it dead. So these are exceptions to the general ayah. Okay, the hadith specifies or gives exceptions to the ayah. And ad-dam is blood. Okay? And the other ayah explains what type of blood, and we spoke about this, ad-dam al-masfuh, and that is flowing blood. And that is the blood that comes out of the animal's body when you slaughter it. That blood is impure. Okay? It is impure for anything to use. So it comes out of the body at the time of dhabh, and it cannot be used for anything. So the sunnah makes exceptions, and that is al-kabid and al-tihal. Okay, al-kabid is liver, and al-tihal is spleen. These are two types of blood. Okay, there's the normal blood that we know of, the flowing blood, and these, as Rasulullah called them blood, they're called dam, so they are a type of blood that are halal. Okay, so liver and spleen are halal to eat, and some of the ulama, they say that these are just blood that gathers in the body and gathers in these places near the liver, or in the liver and in the spleen, and it gathers there, and this is, they say, the most pure blood in the entire body, the one in the liver and in the spleen, and they're just organs or parts of the body that are actual blood, but it's not flowing blood. It's jamid. It's harder than the normal blood. It's not flowing blood. So Rasulullah explained them as dam. So we say they are dam. They are a type of blood, but they are halal to eat, and all other types of blood are haram. Okay, so this is an example of how the Sunnah specifies things from the Quran, or makes exceptions for things from the Quran, and how the Sunnah and the Quran, they work together. So the ayah goes on, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةُ وَالدَّمُ وَلَحْمُ الْخِنْزِيرِ وَمَا أُهِلَّ بِهِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions examples of al-maytah. Okay, He mentions 4 examples of al-maytah. وَمَا أُهِلَّ بِهِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ. The first one He says, وَالْمُنْخَنِقَةُ. Okay, an animal that died from suffocation. And those of you who have the ayah, you can see it in there. Al-munkhaniqatu is an animal that dies from suffocation. Okay, its breathing pathways have been blocked or whatever, and it dies from al-khanq. Okay, so that is a type of maytah. So an animal that dies from suffocation is haram. You cannot eat it. Wal-munkhaniqatu wa, what's the next one? Al-mawquda is an animal that died from a blow, from a stick or a stone, or something hit it, or it hit something, or something fell on it, a large stone or something, and it died from that blow. That is also a maytah. It is haram to eat. وَالْمَوْقُودَةُ وَالْمُتَرَدِّيَةُ, an animal that falls from a high place. An animal that falls off a cliff, or falls off any place that's high, it falls down and it dies from that, is haram to eat. وَالنَّطِيحَةُ, an animal that was impaled, like by another animal, the horns of another animal impaled one animal and died from that. or was impaled from something else, something sharp went in its body and it died, then that animal is haram to eat. Unless, all of these have the exception, unless you reach it before it dies and you slaughter it. Okay, so even an animal that was impaled somehow, or it was hurt some way, it was injured, and it's dying, but it's still alive, if you get to it before it dies and you make dhabiha of it, it is halal. Okay, because what killed it is your dhabiha. Okay, so any animal that's injured or dying, and you see it, and you reach it, and you can tell it's still alive, it's still breathing or moving, or you can see its stomach breathing or something like that, and you slaughter it, then it becomes halal to eat. So this ayah, and there's another ayah similar to this in Surah Al-Baqarah, and as we said, this ayah is the general rule, and the exceptions came from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these, the Prophet ﷺ said, these two types of dead animals are halal, the fish and the locust, and these two types of blood are halal to eat, the liver and the spleen. Now, these animals, they're halal to eat if you find them dead, unless there is something in it that you think may be harmful, like a disease or poison or something like that. If you think something is in it that is harmful to you, it is haram to eat. Because the greater principle is you do not harm yourself. La darar wa la dirar. You do not harm yourself, you do not harm others, or you do not cause harm. Okay, so yes, the dead fish is halal. Yes, the dead locust is halal. But if there's something in it that you may think is harmful, like a disease, a sickness, or poison, or something like that, that's in it that will harm you, then the greater principle comes into play, and that is you cannot eat anything that's going to harm you, even though it's halal. Okay? So Islam has greater principles that are to be followed that take priority over the lesser ones. Okay, one of those is to preserve your life, to preserve your health, to preserve your mind, to preserve your family, your wealth, your property. These are greater principles of Islam that take priority over the smaller ones, like what you can eat and what you can't eat. So one of them is that you do not cause any harm to yourself by what you eat. And inshallah, we are going to stop here. So I advise all of you to read these ayat. Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah number 3, and the other one is Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 173. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 173. These ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains what's prohibited and explains that these types of animals are prohibited, and the blood and the meat of the pig. So read these ayat, read the explanation,